Chapter 1. Every time I walk through the front door of my parents' house, I feel the weight of expectation, the underlying tension that seems to settle into the walls the moment I step inside. It's like I'm not even a person anymore. Just a reflection of whatever I'm supposed to be in their eyes. My name is Sophia Carson, and I'm 34 years old. I've built a life for myself that I'm proud of. I'm the director of marketing at Innovative Solutions, making decisions that influence global campaigns, leading projects that push boundaries. I've worked hard for everything I've achieved, but when I come home, none of that matters. At home. I'm just a daughter in the shadow of Emily. Emily, 36, the successful lawyer, always in the spotlight with her perfect life, her perfect career. And then there's me, the one who fought for every inch, the one who worked twice as hard to be seen. But in this house, none of that matters. It's always Emily, always her achievements that get paraded around the dinner table while I get pushed aside. For years, I tried to play the part. I tried to be who they wanted me to be. But this year was different. This Christmas, I was finally going to stand up for myself. I had just been promoted at work, and I was going to announce it. I wanted to be proud, but when I spoke, my mom's cold words hit harder than I could have imagined. You're the most useless one in this family. In that moment, I realized something if they couldn't see me. I would have to learn to see myself, but whenever I come home, none of that matters. I've never been the golden child in my family. That title was always reserved for Emily, my younger sister. Emily's 36, a successful lawyer with a prestigious firm, and her accomplishments are always the centerpiece of every family gathering. Growing up, I was the one who had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. Every year, every birthday, every Christmas dinner, it's the same thing. Emily's latest triumphs are paraded around while my achievements are brushed aside. Like, they don't count for much. It was the same at this year's Christmas dinner. My parents' house in suburban Chicago was as familiar as always. The same old decorations, the smell of fresh pine and cinnamon rolls filling the air. The house felt warm, but the tension I knew was coming lingered like coldest chill. My parents greeted me with their usual smiles. My mom, Sarah, all polished and proud, was immediately critical of my appearance. My dad, Robert, more laid back than I remembered, pulled me into one of his signature bear hugs. But the moment I walked in, I could already feel the pressure building. "Look at you," my mom said, her eyes narrowing as she looked me up and down. "That dress, Sophia, it makes you look ... washed out." I'd spent the last hour getting ready, picking out something I thought was professional, but still festive. "Mom, I spent time on my hair this morning." I tried to laugh it off, but it felt like my words didn't even register. She was already moving past me, her gaze shifting to Emily, who was standing near the fireplace, looking impeccable as always in a tailored suit. "Oh, Emily, you look absolutely stunning in that suit," my mom gushed. Emily beamed with that smile she always seemed to get away with, as if nothing ever fazed her. It was hard not to feel like I didn't belong there, standing in my own home, being evaluated like a dismal failure. I bit my lip and forced a smile. "Thanks, Mom," I said, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. Dinner was no different. We sat at the long table, my mom in her usual position at the head, Dad at the other end. Emily sat next to Mom as always, ready to spill her latest legal success stories. My dad asked about my work, but his interest felt shallow, as if he was just going through the motions. "How's that marketing thing going?" he asked, looking up from his plate. "It's great," I said, trying to inject a little enthusiasm into my voice. "Actually, I just got promoted to director. I'm overseeing all international campaigns now." I waited for their reaction, but it was as though I'd told them I'd become a professional clown. My mom didn't even look up from her plate. She just nodded and said, "That's nice, dear." Then, before I could say anything more, she turned to Emily. "Did I tell you Emily's firm just won another high-profile case? She's really making a name for herself. You should talk to her about getting involved in something more meaningful, Sophia." I felt the blood drain from My face. Emily barely glanced up from her food, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She was the one who always got praised for the smallest of things, while I was here, barely acknowledged despite everything I had worked for. The meal dragged on, and I tried my best to keep the conversation light. But every time I spoke, my mom would somehow steer the focus back to Emily. Every time I tried to share something positive about my work, it was dismissed, overshadowed by something else Emily had accomplished. My stomach churned with frustration. I'd spent months working on international campaigns, working late nights and weekends to make sure my team delivered outstanding results. But none of it seemed to matter. I was just the middle child, invisible, nothing more than a footnote in the story of Emily's success. I excused myself to help Mom with the dishes, trying to get away from the constant comparisons. Mom barely acknowledged me as she handed me a stack of plates. "You know, Sophia," she said, barely looking at me, "I've always said marketing isn't a real career. It's just making pretty pictures and selling nonsense to people." I froze. I couldn't believe she was saying this to me, standing right here in my own house. But I swallowed my pride and forced myself to stay calm. "Mom, marketing is about strategy and understanding consumer behavior. It's a real career. Maybe for people who can't do real work," she muttered under her breath, her words sharp like a knife. I could feel the tears start to sting behind my eyes, but I held them back, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of seeing me weak. "Do you ever get tired of doing this?" I asked quietly, my voice trembling slightly. "Of always tearing me down?" Her eyes flickered with something, maybe guilt, maybe irritation, but she quickly masked it with another cold smile. "You just don't understand. You're too sensitive, Sophia. If you worked as hard as Emily, maybe I wouldn't have to say these things." The words stung, but I didn't let them break me. I couldn't. I was tired of fighting for scraps of approval. The evening went on, but I couldn't wait to leave. I smiled and nodded through the rest of dinner, forcing myself to laugh at my dad's jokes and listen to Emily's latest career achievements. When it was time to say goodbye, I hugged my dad tightly, even though I knew it was only temporary. I wouldn't let myself be sucked back into this world, where I was always second place. As I left the house, walking down the familiar driveway, I took a deep breath and told myself, this wasn't the end. I would prove them wrong. I would show my family, especially my mom, that I didn't need their approval to be successful. This was only the beginning. Chapter 2. It was strange to feel so sure of myself at work, but so vulnerable in my own family. I knew I had accomplished something big in my career, but I also knew that as long as my family saw me as the second choice, I would never truly feel fulfilled. That thought kept lingering as I sat across from David McAllister at a small, dimly lit restaurant on the edge of the city. It was just the two of us, sharing a quiet meal, far away from the chaos of my family's expectations. David had been my support from the very start, the only one in my life who had truly understood me, and the one person who believed in me without reservation. David was 38, and he was everything I needed in a partner: successful, confident, and comfortable in his own skin. He was the director of marketing at a growing media agency, and I first met him at a marketing conference in Boston. I remember the way his eyes sparkled when we started talking about brand strategy. It was like I had found someone who spoke my language, someone who appreciated the complexities of what we did. From that moment on, our professional conversations always seemed to flow into something more personal. Tonight, as we sat across from each other, I could sense the usual ease between us, but there was also something more, a deeper connection that I hadn't fully realized before. Maybe it was because I was so used to fighting for approval, to seeking validation from others, that I had forgotten what it felt like to be truly accepted for who I was. David didn't care that I was in marketing. He didn't need me to fit into any mold. "So, how's everything going with the new campaign at work?" David asked, taking a bite of his pasta. I paused, letting the question linger in the air. "It's going well. But honestly, there's always this pressure to prove myself. Every time I hit a milestone, it feels like it's not enough. David raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I sighed, looking out the window at the busy street below. You know how it is, my family ... They don't really get what I do. My mom especially. She's always had this idea of success, and it doesn't fit with what I'm doing. I get the sense that no matter what I accomplish, she never thinks it's enough. David leaned back in his chair, looking at me with a thoughtful expression. I get it, but you're a force. You don't need their approval. I've seen you work. I know what you're capable of. What I admire about you is your independence. You've built everything yourself, and that's something no one can take away from you. His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I wasn't used to hearing someone praise me for things that I thought were just part of the job. It was easy for me to downplay my achievements because they never seemed to matter to the people I wanted to impress the most. But David ... He wasn't like them. He saw me. Really saw me. Thanks, I said softly, my voice catching in my throat. That means a lot to me. We sat in silence for a moment, and I realized how much I needed this someone who could see me without the filters of my family's expectations. But at the same time, a part of me was terrified. What if my family never saw me the way David did? What if they never understood what I was doing, or worse, never accepted it? I've been thinking, David said, breaking the silence. You've worked so hard, Sophia. You deserve more than just this constant battle for approval. I'm proud of you. I hope you know that, and I think your mom will come around. It might take time, but she sees what you've built. I believe that. I smiled, but it was a smile tinged with doubt. I wish I could believe that. Sometimes it feels like I'm invisible to them, like nothing I do will ever be enough. David reached across the table, his hand resting gently on mine. Then let them see it. Let them see what they're missing. You don't need their approval to be successful. You already are. I looked at him, his words sinking in. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd spent too much time trying to live up to others' expectations, and in the process, I had lost sight of what really mattered, my own happiness and self-worth. We continued talking through dinner, but my mind kept wandering back to those words. You don't need their approval. I had spent so much of my life seeking validation from people who would never understand me. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for their approval. I'd already built a career I was proud of. Now I needed to learn how to accept that and move forward. As we finished our meal and prepared to leave, David stood up and helped me put on my coat. I felt lighter, like weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I didn't have to prove myself to anyone but me. Walking out into the crisp night air, I felt a strange sense of peace. With David by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. I wasn't going to let the judgment of my family define me anymore. The car ride back to my apartment was quiet, comfortable. David drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the seat between us. I could feel his steady presence beside me, like a promise that I wasn't alone in this. As we pulled up to my building, I turned to him, my heart full of gratitude. Thank you, David, I said, my voice soft. For believing in me, he smiled, his eyes warm. Always, Sophia, always. I kissed him on the cheek, lingering for a moment longer than usual, and stepped out of the car. As I walked toward the entrance of my building, I felt a shift inside me. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to believe in myself, too. But as I unlocked the door to my apartment and stepped inside, the weight of the family gathering still hung in my mind. There was still so much to prove, not just to my mom, but to myself. And I was ready to face it head on. Chapter 3. The air in my parents' house that Christmas felt thick, suffocating almost. I could feel the tension crawling up my spine as I walked through the familiar front door, greeted by the scent of pine and cinnamon. It should have been a moment of joy, of family togetherness, but for me, it felt like stepping into a battlefield I wasn't sure I was ready for. The evening's event loomed over me. This year, I was finally going to share my promotion with them, and for the first time, I was going to talk about David. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew that whatever happened, it was going to change everything. As we gathered around the dinner table, I tried to push down the anxiety building in my chest. The same long table that had been a silent witness to years of family dynamics now seemed to carry the weight of all my unspoken frustrations. My mom, Sarah, was sitting at the head of the table as usual, her sharp eyes scanning the room, assessing everything and everyone. My dad, Robert, sat next to her, looking more relaxed than I had seen him in years. Emily, my younger sister, sat next to him, as always, with her picture-perfect smile and her usual air of superiority. Dinner started out like every other family gathering. My mom commented on the food. Emily talked about a new case she had taken on, and Robert joked about something from his childhood. I listened to the chatter around me, my mind racing with thoughts of what I was about to say. I had rehearsed it all in my head 1,000 times. I was going to say it calmly, confidently, like it was just another part of the conversation. I wasn't going to let them see how much I cared about their approval. Finally, I spoke up, my voice steady but my hands trembling slightly as I placed my fork down. I have something I want to share with everyone, I said, trying to make it sound casual. I got promoted at work. I'm now the director of marketing at Hexatech, overseeing all international campaigns. The words hung in the air for a moment, and I could see my parents' faces shift. My dad smiled, nodding with a small, proud glance. But my mom's expression didn't change. Not a flicker. "That's nice, dear," she said flatly, her eyes not leaving her plate. It wasn't just the lack of enthusiasm that stung. It was the indifference, like she wasn't even trying to understand what it meant for me. I waited for more, for any kind of acknowledgement, but none came. Emily, of course, wasted no time. "Oh, that's wonderful, Sophia," she chimed in, her voice dripping with that false sweetness that I had come to expect. "I'm sure you're just doing all sorts of great things over there. I mean, marketing is so impressive, right?" I could feel my chest tighten. Why did it always feel like she had to make it a point to diminish what I did? She never missed an opportunity to remind me that whatever I had accomplished was nothing compared to her career in law, but I refused to let it show. I wasn't going to let Emily take this moment away from me, even if my own mother already had. I took a deep breath and tried again. "Actually, it's been really exciting. I'm working on global campaigns now, and it's been an amazing challenge. I've been putting in a lot of late nights and long weekends, but it's been worth it." My mom finally looked up, but her gaze was cold, detached. "I just don't get it, Sophia," she said, her voice sharp. "What's the point of all this marketing nonsense? You're just pushing products on people. It's not real work. People who do real jobs, like Emily, those are the ones who make a difference." I could feel my pulse quicken, my heart pounding in my chest. The words felt like a slap in the face, and I struggled to keep my composure. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Emily piped up again. "Well, Sophia, Emily," said, her voice sweet but her words cutting. "I think marketing is nice for some people, but it's just not the same as what I do. I mean, you're not changing lives like I am. But hey, you do you, right?" I stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on me. It wasn't the first time I'd felt like this, like my achievements were small and insignificant compared to everyone else's. It wasn't the first time Emily had belittled me in front of our parents, but it felt like it was the last straw. The tears that I had been holding back since I walked into the room were threatening to spill over, but I refused to let them see me break. I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah, you're right, Emily. I'm just happy with where I am." But it was too late. My mom was already moving on to the next topic, never really hearing me at all. She had already decided that my success wasn't worth acknowledging. And the more I thought about it, the more it hit me. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, it would never be enough for her. I would always be the failure, the one who didn't live up to her expectations. Dinner went on in a blur after that. I couldn't focus on the conversation. I couldn't focus on anything except the emptiness I felt at the table. I had spent so many years trying to gain their approval, but no matter how much I achieved, it always felt like it wasn't enough. Emily's laughter, my mom's dismissive glances, my dad's awkward attempts to fill the silence, it was all just noise. I couldn't hear it anymore. All I could hear was a voice in my head telling me that I had failed again. When the meal finally ended, I excused myself to help my mom clear the table, hoping to get a moment of silence, hoping to regain some sense of control. But as I stacked the dishes in the sink, my mom stood beside me, her expression still unreadable. "You know, Sophia," she said in that same cold tone, "you're just the middle child, always trying to prove something. You never really seem to get it. You're not like Emily, you never will be. You're just ... not good enough." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I froze, my hands shaking as I placed the plate in the sink. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it was impossible. "What do you mean, not good enough?" I whispered, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. She sighed, not looking at me. "I'm tired of having to tell you this, Sophia, but you're the most useless one in this family. I don't know why you can't see it." I felt a coldness spread through my body. Every ounce of self-worth I had worked so hard to build came crashing down in that instant. It wasn't just about the promotion. It wasn't about the career I'd worked so hard to create for myself. It was about everything every year I had spent trying to gain their approval, trying to live up to their standards. And in one moment, my mom had stripped it all away. I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. I just walked out of the kitchen and out of the house, leaving behind the family I had once hoped would accept me for who I was. As I drove home, the weight of my mother's words echoed in my mind. I thought I had proven something, but now I was left wondering if I'd ever truly be good enough, but I would prove it to myself. I wasn't going to let her words define me any longer. I had come too far to be stopped now. Chapter 4. The night after Christmas, as I sat alone in my apartment, the weight of my mother's words still pressed down on me. "You're the most useless one in this family." Every time I replayed them in my head, they stung even more. How had I ended up here fighting for my worth in a family that couldn't see past their own expectations? How had I gone through life thinking that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I accomplished, it would never be enough for them? I stared out the window, the city lights shimmering against the darkened sky, and felt the emptiness settle. And my whole life had been a series of trying to meet my mom's expectations. The first day of kindergarten, when she told me I was too slow to keep up with the other kids. The middle school talent show when I sang my heart out, only for her. To say it wasn't as good as Emily's recital the year before. Even in high school, when I had a chance to be valedictorian, my mom barely acknowledged it. "You should have done better," she said. "You could have done better if you just tried harder." The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the pattern wasn't just something I could shake off. It had been woven into the fabric of my life. No matter what I did, I was always second to Emily. She was the perfect daughter, perfect career, perfect life, perfect everything. And me? I was the one left behind, trying to prove that I was good enough for a family that would never recognize. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep playing by their rules, trying to win their approval. The only thing that mattered was my own happiness, but even that seemed out of reach. My job, my accomplishments, all felt hollow now, like they were nothing more than empty milestones. I needed to get away from all of it, to find a way to breathe without the constant weight of their judgment. That's when I decided to cut ties, at least for a little while. I needed space-time to figure out who I was without their voices in. My head without the pressure to meet their standards. I sent a text to my mom the next morning, something simple and brief. "I'm taking a break from family stuff for a while. I'll reach out when I'm ready." It felt freeing in a way. But as I pressed send, a wave of guilt washed over me. How could I not feel guilty about this? Family was supposed to be everything, right? But if my family couldn't see me for who I was, for what I had achieved, maybe it was time to let go of the need for their validation. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long began to lift, even if just a little. I didn't know how long it would take for me to figure things out, but I knew I needed to be away from that toxic environment. That afternoon, I called Kathy Turner, my best friend. She had always been the one person who got it. Kathy and I met at university, both trying to figure out what we wanted from our lives. While I was always the overachiever, trying to meet everyone's expectations, Kathy was the free spirit, the one who made decisions based on what felt right for her. Over the years, she had become my anchor. "Hey, Kathy, it's me," I said, feeling a knot in my stomach. "Can we talk?" "Of course, what's up?" Kathy's voice was warm, welcoming as it always was. I just don't know where to begin. I paused, taking a deep breath. "I think I need a break from my family. From everything, really. It's just too much. I can't keep doing this." "Yeah, I get it," Kathy replied, her tone sympathetic but also understanding. "You've been carrying that weight for so long. It's no wonder it's eating at you. What happened?" I explained everything, the dinner, the words my mom had said, the years of feeling invisible, always second best. Kathy listened quietly, never interrupting, just offering that steady, unwavering presence I needed. "You know what I think?" Kathy finally said, her voice firm but gentle. "I think you need to stop looking for approval from people who aren't capable of giving it to you. You've worked your ass off, Sophia. You've built something incredible for yourself. It doesn't matter what they think." "But it does matter," I said, the frustration rising in my chest again. "It always has. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time they'd see me. But no, it's the same thing every time." "I know," Kathy said, her voice softer now. "But that's not your burden to carry. If they can't see what you've done, that's on them, not you. You've got your own path now. You've got David, you've got your work, you've got yourself. That's what matters." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But it was hard to let go of the part of me that had spent so long trying to gain their approval. It was hard to walk away from the idea of family, of being accepted for who I was. But hearing Kathy's words, something inside me started to shift. Maybe it was time to stop trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Maybe it was time to let go of the weight I'd been carrying all these years. "You're right," I said finally, my voice steady. "I can't keep doing this. I'm not going to let them dictate my worth anymore." Kathy sighed, a relieved sound. "Good, you deserve better than that." "I'm proud of you, Sophia." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "Thanks, Kathy. I really needed to hear that." We talked for a little while longer until I felt a bit lighter. Hanging up the phone, I felt the room around me suddenly clearer, less heavy. For the first time in days, I took a deep breath and didn't feel like I was suffocating. I wasn't sure what came next. I didn't know how long it would take for me to really let go of the past, but I was ready to try. Ready to figure out who I was without the constant comparison, without the relentless need for my family's approval. I would take the time to heal, to find my own peace. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth a dot. As I looked around my apartment, my own little space where I could breathe, I realized something. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what the future held. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Chapter 5. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter, as though the weight I had carried for so long had finally started to lift. I'd made the decision to let go of the constant need for approval, but something still lingered in the back of my mind. My mom's words from the night of Christmas dinner echoed in my head, and no matter how much I told myself I was done seeking validation, I couldn't help but wonder why she always treated me like I wasn't enough. What had I done to deserve that? Was it really just about me, or was there something deeper? It was while I was driving to work that the thought hit me, maybe it wasn't just me. Maybe, just maybe, my mom had her own demons, her own unresolved pain that had nothing to do with me. Kathy's words came back to me. You need to stop looking for approval from people who aren't capable of giving it to you. I had listened to Kathy, but now I needed to understand more. I needed to know why my mom was the way she was. So I decided to ask someone who might have some answers. My grandmother, Madeline Jennings. Ma'am lives in her late 70s. But she was sharp as a tack and still lived in the house she had shared with my grandfather. I hadn't seen her much in recent years, but she was always a comforting presence when I was younger. I remembered sitting with her in the kitchen, listening to her stories about life, about the old days. She'd always been the quiet one in the family, but when she spoke, people listened. I knew she would have answers if she was willing to give them. That afternoon, I made the decision to drive to her house. It was a bit of a trek, but I didn't mind. As I pulled up to the old colonial-style home, the familiar scent of jasmine from the garden reminded me of the summers I used to spend here as a child. I rang the doorbell, my heart beating faster as I waited for her to answer. When the door creaked open, Madeline stood there with a soft smile, her silver hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her eyes were the same shade of blue as mine, and they softened when she saw me. "Sophia, my dear," she said, pulling me into a hug. "It's so good to see you." I returned the hug, but the weight of the question I had been carrying pressed heavily on me. "Grandma," I said after a moment, pulling back, "can we talk?" "Of course, come in," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "You're looking well, my dear. I can tell you've been through a lot lately." We sat in the living room, and as I looked around, I noticed how little had changed over the years. The same antique furniture, the same family photos on the walls, the same old clock ticking away in the corner. It was a comfort, but it also made me feel like I'd been stuck in time. Like I hadn't really moved forward at all. "Grandma," I began, trying to steady my voice. "I need to know about Mom. About her past. Why does she treat me the way she does? Why does she always make me feel like I'm never good enough?" Madeline paused, her hands folded in her lap as she looked at me. Her eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought she wasn't going to say anything. But then she spoke, her voice low and measured. "Your mother, Sophia, has always been a complicated woman. She wasn't always like that, you know? When she was younger, she was just as ambitious as you are now. But life has a way of crushing people, especially when they feel like they're never seen for who they truly are." I leaned forward, eager to hear more. "What happened? What changed?" Madeline let out a sigh, her eyes wandering to the window as though she were searching for the right words. "Sarah always lived in the shadow of her sister, your aunt. Your aunt was always the perfect child, the one who never did anything wrong. Your mom, though, she was different. She was always trying to prove herself, to be as good as your aunt, but it never seemed to be enough. She struggled with that for years, and honestly, she never really got over it." My heart clenched as I listened to Madeline's words. I had never known the full story of my mom's childhood, but hearing it now, it felt like a weight had shifted. My mom's anger, her criticism, all of it made sense, in a way. She had been trying to live up to someone else's expectations her whole life. But still, knowing this didn't make it easier to accept the way she had treated me. "But why did she have to take it out on me?" I asked, my voice cracking with emotion. "Why does she always make me feel like I'm not good enough?" Madeline looked at me with a sadness in her eyes that I had never seen before. "I think, dear, that your mother never knew how to let go of that pain. She's carried it with her for so long that it became part of who she is. And when you came along, you became a reminder of everything she felt she had failed at. She wanted you to be perfect, just like she had wanted to be. But she couldn't see you for who you really are." I felt a lump form in my throat, and the tears I had been holding back began to sting my eyes. I don't know how to forgive her for that. How do I move forward when she can't even see me? When she still treats me like I'm not enough? Madeline reached over and gently took my hand. "Forgiveness is a tricky thing, Sophia. It's not about excusing what your mom has done. It's about understanding that she's carrying her own burdens, and sometimes those burdens make people act in ways they don't even understand. But you don't have to carry that weight with her. You can choose to let go, to be free of the past that she's held you in. That's what you need to do to take the power back for yourself." I nodded. Slowly, feeling a mix of emotions flood through me. I understood now, more than I ever had before, why my mom was the way she was. But knowing the reason didn't make it easier to bear. It didn't change the hurt or the years of feeling unseen, unappreciated, and second-rate, but it did give me something I hadn't had before: clarity. I could see my mom for who she was, not just for how she treated me, but for the pain she had carried for so long. And maybe that was the first step toward healing. For both of us, as I left Madeline's house, I felt like a part of me had finally started to make sense, but I still had a long way to go. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to face it, armed with the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel so alone. Chapter 6. The days that followed my conversation with Grandma Madeline were filled with a mixture of clarity and confusion. For the first time, I understood that my mother's behavior wasn't just some random cruelty. It came from years of pain and disappointment, from a life spent in the shadow of her sister, and a constant feeling of being overlooked. But even though I understood the reasons, the bitterness I had been carrying for so long didn't just disappear. If anything, it grew heavier. I spent days replaying Madeline's words in my mind, trying to make sense of them. My mother had never known how to handle her pain, how to deal with the resentment she carried from her own childhood. She projected all of that onto me, onto my accomplishments, my choices. And what hurt the most was that I had spent so long thinking it was my fault. But now I saw the truth. My mother wasn't just hard on me because of who I was. She was hard on me because she couldn't face her own failures, and somehow I had become the target for all the unspoken anger and frustration she had been holding on to for decades, but understanding her didn't make it any easier to forgive her. It didn't erase the years of hurt, of feeling like I was never enough. And as much as I wanted to understand, I couldn't deny that it was incredibly difficult to live with the knowledge that the person who was supposed to love and support me had been the one tearing me down all these years. I had tried to talk to her a few times after Christmas, but every conversation ended in frustration. She couldn't or wouldn't see what she was doing to me. Every time I tried to bring up my feelings, she brushed them aside as though they were inconsequential. Every time I shared something personal, she would make it about Emily. As if I were invisible. That was when I decided to talk to my dad. I needed to hear his side, needed to know if he had seen the same things I had. I needed him to understand what was happening, to help me figure out how to deal with it. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to try. The next weekend, I drove to my parents' house to see him. The thought of seeing my mom again made my stomach churn, but I knew it was time to confront the situation head on. When I arrived, my dad greeted me with his usual warm hug, but I could tell that he knew something was wrong. I hadn't spoken to him in days, and I hadn't told him about my decision to distance myself from the family. "Hey, kiddo," he said, his voice thick with concern. "How's everything going? You've been awfully quiet lately." I hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." He nodded and led me into the living room, where we sat down on the couch. The house felt empty, even though my mom was upstairs. I could already feel the tension creeping in, like a storm waiting to break. "Is everything okay between you and your mom?" he asked gently, his brow furrowing. "You know she loves you, right?" "I've been worried about you too." I swallowed hard. I wasn't sure how to start, but I knew I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I don't think she knows how to love me, Dad, not the way I need her to. I'm so tired of feeling like I'm not enough. I've been trying for so long to meet her expectations, but it's never been enough." My dad's expression softened, and for a moment I could see the pain in his eyes. "I know it's been tough for you, Sophia," he said quietly. "Your mom, she's never been great at showing affection. I know she's always had a hard time with that." I looked at him, my heart pounding. But why? Why is it like this? Why has she always made me feel like I'm not good enough? Like everything I do is just ... Nothing compared to Emily? My dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. Sarah has always been hard on herself, especially when it comes to you. She's been carrying a lot of pain for a long time, but I don't think she knows how to handle it. You know how much she struggled growing up, right? Living in the shadow of her sister, always feeling like she didn't measure up. I nodded slowly. Madeline had told me about that, about how my mom had spent years in the background, always fighting to be seen. But hearing my dad say it out loud made it feel more real, more raw. She's always had a tough time with that, and I think, in her own way, she's been trying to protect you from the things she couldn't protect herself. From my dad continued. But instead of protecting you, she's been pushing you away. And I know it's been hard. I know it's hurt you. I looked at him, the weight of his words sinking in. My mom's pain wasn't an excuse for the way she treated me, but it was. A reason, and for some reason, knowing that made me feel a little less angry, but it didn't erase the hurt. Why hasn't she ever talked to me about it? I asked, my voice tight with emotion. Why has she always made me feel like I'm not enough? My dad shifted in his seat, his face darkening. She's afraid. Afraid of being seen for who she really is, afraid of being vulnerable. I don't think she knows how to be open with you about her past, Sophia. She's spent so long building up walls that she doesn't know how to tear them down. And I've let her do that. I should have said something sooner, should have stepped in more. The guilt in his voice was evident, and I felt a pang of sympathy for him. But I also felt the anger rising again. But you did nothing, Dad. You saw how she treated me, how she treated both of us, and you did nothing. He nodded, his gaze dropping to the floor. I know. I should have been more of a father to you, but it's hard, you know? I don't want to make things worse. I don't know how to fix it, and I'm sorry for that, Sophia. I truly am. I took a deep breath, my emotions swirling inside me. I'm not doing this anymore, Dad. I can't keep living like this, pretending everything is okay. I'm tired of trying to get their approval. I'm tired of feeling like I'm never enough. My dad looked at me, his expression full of regret. I understand, and I'm sorry. You deserve better than this, Sophia. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, and I quickly wiped it away. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I have to stop pretending for my own sake. I can't keep waiting for her to change. I have to change. We sat there in silence for a while, the weight of our conversations sinking in. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let this family dynamic control me anymore. I was ready to take the first steps toward freedom, even if it meant breaking away from the past, and that was a decision I would stand by. Chapter 7. I wasn't going to be held back anymore. Not by my family, not by their expectations, and certainly not by their inability to see my worth. I had made my decision, and I was determined to move forward with it. No matter what dot at work, the new project felt like a new beginning. The moment I was asked to lead the new international marketing campaign at Veridian Technologies, I knew it was the opportunity I had been waiting for. The project was massive, and the pressure was immense. I had to prove not just to my company, but to myself that I was capable of handling a project of this scale. The campaign was about expanding Veridian's presence in Asia and Europe, and the market research had been done, but the creative direction needed to be completely redefined. I was tasked with leading a diverse team of creatives and analysts, each one bringing their own vision, their own ideas. I was excited, but at the same time a little apprehensive. The last time I had been given such a big responsibility, I had second-guessed myself every step of the way. This time, I wasn't going to make the same mistake. The first week on the project was a whirlwind. I met with the team daily, set clear expectations, and gave everyone the space they needed to thrive. We brainstormed, we collaborated, and I pushed them to think outside the box. There was something exhilarating about watching a group of talented people come together to create something amazing. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. Like I was doing something that truly mattered. But as the project moved forward, cracks started to show. Some of my colleagues, the ones who had been with the company longer, didn't exactly warm up to my leadership style. They were used to doing things their way. And they didn't take kindly to a woman in her early 30s telling them how to approach something they had been doing for years. Greg, one of the senior strategists, was particularly resistant. Every time I presented an idea or suggestion, he would question it, shoot it down without offering any constructive feedback. It was frustrating to say the least, but I refused to back down. This was my project, my team, and I wasn't going to let anyone undermine me. One afternoon, after a particularly tense meeting, I found myself sitting alone in my office, staring at my computer screen. The weight of the project was beginning to feel heavier, and the lack of support from my colleagues made me question whether I was doing the right thing. I had already come so far, but the constant pushback was starting to wear me down. I picked up my phone, and for a moment I considered calling David. He always knew how to calm me down, to remind me of my strength. But then I thought about my mom's words again. Would David even understand how it felt to be constantly doubted by the people you worked with? I put the phone down and decided to push forward. I had to prove that I could do this on my own, without relying on anyone else's approval or validation. I was capable of leading this team, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The next day, I went into the office with a renewed sense of determination. I gathered the team together and laid out the next steps for the project. This time, I was clear, direct, and confident. I didn't ask for permission, I just took charge. I could feel the tension in the room, but I didn't let it shake me. I had made the decision to lead, and I wasn't going to let anyone stop. And as the weeks went on, I started to see results. The team was producing incredible work, and the campaign was beginning to take shape. But as much as I was focused on the project, a part of me couldn't stop thinking about the emptiness I felt every time I went home. My family's absence, their lack of support, it weighed on me more than I cared to admit. Every night as I sat at my desk, I couldn't help but feel like something was missing. I hadn't heard from my mom in weeks, and while part of me longed to reach out, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had made it clear that I needed space, but it wasn't just the silence from her that bothered me. It was the nagging feeling that I was still chasing something that wasn't ever going to come. I wanted my mom to be proud of me, to see me for who I was, but the truth was, I couldn't keep waiting for that. I couldn't keep waiting for her to validate me. David noticed the change in me. I had stopped sharing my frustrations with him, stopped leaning on him the way I used to. I had become consumed with the project, consumed with proving that I was enough. One night, as we sat at dinner, he looked at me with concern. "You've been working non-stop lately," he said, his voice soft. "Are you sure you're okay? You've been pushing yourself harder than usual." I glanced at him, feeling the exhaustion settle into my bones. "I'm fine," I said, offering a forced smile. "I just want this campaign to be perfect. I want to prove to everyone that I can handle it." David didn't say anything at first, just studied me with those piercing eyes of his. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone, Sophia," he said gently. "You've already proven yourself, but if you keep pushing this hard, you're going to burn out. You don't have to do it all on your own." I looked at him, taking in his words, but something inside me snapped. I didn't want to burn out, but I also didn't want to be seen as weak. I didn't want to be the one who needed help, who couldn't handle everything herself. "I'm not burning out," I said, a little sharper than I intended. "I'm just doing what I need to do to succeed. I don't need anyone to hold my hand." David sighed, his expression softening. "I'm not trying to hold your hand, Sophia. I'm just saying you don't have to carry all of this weight alone." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt a crack in my walls. Maybe I didn't have to carry everything alone. Maybe it was okay to let someone in, to let someone help me. But the thought of doing that scared me. I took a deep breath and pushed the feelings aside. I wasn't going to let fear hold me back. I was going to finish this campaign, I was going to prove myself, and I was going to do it on my own terms. The weight I carried might not be something I could share, but it was mine to bear. As I sat back in my chair that night, looking over the team's progress, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I was doing it. I was leading the team, I was excelling, and I was proving to myself that I could do this. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. Chapter 8. I had been focused on the campaign for weeks, pouring everything I had into it, but something was beginning to shift. As the project moved forward and things started to fall into place, there was a nagging sense of unease in the back of my mind. It wasn't the campaign or my work, everything was progressing beautifully in that department. It was something else. It was David. It wasn't that we fought or that there was any major issue between us. But there was a tension now that hadn't been there before. Something had changed and I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, but I felt it in the silence between us, in the way he seemed distracted when we spent time together. He was no longer looking at me the same way he had before. He wasn't as present, and it was beginning to hurt. It started after he introduced me to his mother, Kelly Williams. David had warned me that his mom was a strong-willed woman, someone who always had an opinion, but I didn't think much of it at first. I didn't expect Kelly to dislike me, but I could tell from the start that she wasn't exactly thrilled with our relationship. I had brushed it off after all. I wasn't looking for her approval. But as time went on, her disapproval became more obvious and the tension grew. One evening, we were having dinner at David's apartment when the conversation shifted toward work, as it often did. David and I had been talking about the success of the campaign when Kelly turned to me with a questioning look. "So, Sophia," she said, her tone cool but polite, "what exactly is it that you do again? I mean, I understand marketing, but I don't see how that's a real career." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I had heard comments like this before from my own family, but it hit differently coming from David's mom. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I lead international marketing campaigns for innovative solutions, working on global strategies and digital innovation," I said, keeping my voice steady. Kelly nodded but didn't seem convinced. "I see," she said, as though she were humoring me. Well, it must be nice to have a job that doesn't require much responsibility. It's not like what David does, where you're actually making a difference. The words stung even though I knew I shouldn't have let them. I looked over at David, expecting him to say something in my defense, but he was silent, his eyes focused on his plate. I could feel my heart sink. This was the third time in as many weeks that Kelly had made some disparaging remark about my career, and David hadn't said a word to stop her. David's silence gnawed at me. Why wasn't he standing up for me? Why was he letting her talk to me this way? It was beginning to feel like a pattern every time I saw Kelly. The comments became more pointed, more hurtful, and every time. David remained quiet that night. As we sat in his living room, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "David," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you say anything to her? You saw how she treated me. Why do you keep letting her do this?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands clasped together in front of him. "Sophia, it's not that simple. You don't know how she is. She's always been like that. It's hard for me to call her out on it. She's my mother." I sat back, shocked by his response. I had always known that family dynamics could be complicated, but I didn't expect this. I didn't expect David to shrink away from standing up for me. "So, you're just going to let her treat me like this?" He didn't answer right away, and the silence between us was deafening. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't know what to do. I'm stuck between my loyalty to my family and my relationship with you. I love you, Sophia, but it's not easy dealing with my mom. She's always been like this." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind raced, my thoughts swirling. I loved David, I really did. But I couldn't help but wonder if I was just a temporary part of his life, something he could push to the side when it came time to appease his family. I couldn't keep ignoring the growing distance between us. It wasn't just about his mom. It was about how he was allowing her to affect our relationship, how he was letting her make me feel small. I had worked so hard to get to this point in my life. I had fought my entire life to prove my worth, to build a career I could be proud of, and yet here I was, in a relationship where I felt like I was constantly fighting for something I shouldn't have to. I wanted David to see me, to recognize the woman I had become, not just someone who fit into his family's expectations. I can't keep doing this, David, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your family, but I can't keep pretending like everything is fine when it's not. You need to figure out where you stand, because I can't keep waiting for you to stand up for me. David's face fell, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. I knew he wasn't a bad person. He was caught between two worlds, trying to navigate both. But I wasn't going to be the one who sacrificed her happiness for the sake of someone else's comfort. Not anymore. I had spent too much of my life doing that. I'm not asking you to choose, David, I continued, my voice softening. I just need to know that you're with me, that you'll support me when it counts. He didn't say anything for a long time, his gaze dropping to the floor. Finally, he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to support you, I don't know how. I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I don't know if that's enough, David. I need more. I need someone who sees me for who I am, not just as a reflection of their family's expectations. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and I hated that I was causing it, but I couldn't keep holding on to a relationship that wasn't giving me what I needed. Not when I had worked so hard to find my own strength, my own worth. I needed to know that David understood. I needed him to understand that I wasn't just fighting for my career anymore. I was fighting for the right to be seen, to be valued. As I left his apartment that night, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I loved David, but I didn't know if love was enough to make this work. I wasn't sure if we could get past this, but I also knew I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace for someone else's comfort. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure where this relationship was headed. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let anyone stand in the way of my happiness, not even David. Chapter 9. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the blank piece of paper in front of me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but the words just wouldn't come. I had spent the last few days thinking about what I wanted to say to my mom, but I still couldn't bring myself to write it. What if it wasn't enough? What if my words couldn't fix the damage that had been done? But I knew deep down that this was the only way forward. I couldn't keep hiding from the truth, couldn't keep letting my family control the way I saw myself. I needed to say everything I'd been holding inside for years. I needed to finally stand up for myself, to let my mom know how her actions had hurt me, how her expectations had suffocated me. But most of all, I needed her to understand that I was no longer the person she could manipulate or belittle. The idea of confronting her head-on terrified me. But Kathy had been right. I had to face my family, to make them see me for who I was. I couldn't let them keep pushing me into a mold that didn't fit. I had spent so many years trying to please them, trying to live up to their standards, but I wasn't that person anymore. I was someone else now. Someone who was strong enough to say enough was enough. I picked up my phone and sent Kathy a quick text. I'm going to do it. I'm writing the letter. Seconds later, she replied, You've got this, Sophia. I'm proud of you. The support from her made my heart swell, and I took a deep breath, ready to begin. I couldn't let fear hold me back any longer. This was my moment. I had to reclaim my voice, to take control of my narrative, and to make it clear that I wouldn't tolerate being treated this way any longer. I started typing, the words coming slowly at first, but then they began to flow. Mom, I've spent years trying to make you proud. I've tried so hard to be the person you want me to be, to live, up to the image you have of me in your mind. But no matter how hard I try, it's never enough. You've always been critical, always found something to point out, something to change. And every time I felt like I was failing, I've been carrying this weight for so long, feeling like I'm never good enough, always in the shadow of Emily, always in the shadow of your expectations. I've tried to prove myself, tried to gain your approval, but it's never been enough. It's exhausting, Mom. It's suffocating. And the truth is, I can't do it anymore. I can't keep living my life in a way that makes you happy while sacrificing my own happiness. I'm not the person you want me to be. I am me, and that should be enough. I know you've had your struggles, and I understand that you've carried pain from your past. But that doesn't excuse how you've treated me. You've made me feel small, made me feel like nothing I do is good enough. And for years, I've let you do that. But no more. I am proud of who I am and what I've accomplished. I am proud of my career, my choices, my independence. I don't need your approval to feel good about myself. I don't need to be perfect in your eyes. I am done trying to fit into a mold that I was never meant to fit into. This isn't about blaming you, Mom. It's about me finally finding the strength to stand up for myself. It's about me finally realizing that I am enough, and I don't need to keep chasing something that will never come. I hope one day you can see me for who I am. But until then, I need space to be myself, to live my life without the constant weight of your judgment. I need to find my own path, and that path doesn't include constantly seeking your approval. I'm doing this for me, Mom, and for the first time, I'm doing it because I know I deserve better. Love, Sophia. When I finished, I sat back, my hands trembling slightly. It felt like a weight had been lifted, but it was also the hardest thing I had ever done. I'd never spoken to my mom. Like this, had never laid it all out on the table. But this letter, this was my truth. And now that I had said it, I knew there was no going back. I had to follow through. I had to take the next step, whatever that meant. I sent the letter, holding my breath as I pressed send. My heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't help but wonder how she would react. Would she understand? Would she even read it? Or would she just brush it off like she always did? But as the seconds ticked by and no response came, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had done it. I had taken control of my story of my life. I had set the boundaries that I needed to set, and now it was up to her to decide whether she would respect them. The rest of the evening felt oddly calm. I had expected the usual rush of anxiety, the fear of what would happen next. But instead, there was just a quiet certainty within me. I had faced my demons, confronted the past, and done what I needed to do. The rest was out of my hands. The next morning, I didn't check my phone right away. I had to give myself time to breathe, to let the reality of what I had done settle in. When I finally did check my messages, I saw a single notification from my mom. I opened it cautiously, unsure of what I would find out. It was a simple text. "I'm reading your letter. I don't know what to say right now." I exhaled slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and nervous anticipation. She was reading it. She was hearing me. That was the first step. And whatever came next, I was ready to face it. Chapter 10. The days that followed my letter to my mom were quiet. I had expected the usual chaos of unanswered questions and hurt feelings, but instead there was a strange calm. I had finally given voice to everything I had been holding inside for so long, and now it was up to her to decide how she wanted to respond. For the first time, I didn't feel the constant pull to reach out, to beg for validation. I had done what I needed to do, and that was enough. But as the days passed, something began to stir inside me, a yearning for connection, for healing. I had cut myself off from my family for a while, and as much as I knew I needed space, there was a part of me that wanted to try again. I wasn't sure what that would look like, but I knew I couldn't keep running away from them forever. I needed to set boundaries, but I also wanted to see if there was room for understanding, for something better than the constant strain we had been living with Dot, so I decided to invite them over. It wasn't just about work anymore. It wasn't just about showing them how far I had come in my career. It was about making them see me, really see me, and hopefully begin to see the person I'd become, not just the version of me they had been holding on to for years. I planned the evening carefully, an informal dinner, nothing too fancy. I wanted it to feel like a moment of connection, a chance to share where I was in my life without all the expectations and pressures that had defined our past gatherings. David was hesitant at first, sensing the tension I was still feeling with my family, but he supported my decision. He knew this was something I needed to do for myself the night of the dinner. I set the table with simple, elegant place settings, trying to create an atmosphere that was comfortable but meaningful. I didn't want to come off as trying too hard. I just wanted it to feel like an honest conversation, even if it meant difficult moments. As I set the food out and heard the doorbell ring, I felt a mix of anticipation and nerves. This was the first step in the new chapter I had been craving, but it wasn't going to be easy. It never was with my family. When they arrived, my mom was the first to step through the door. She still looked as polished and composed as ever, but there was something different about her tonight. Her eyes seemed softer, less guarded. I wasn't sure if it was the letter I'd sent or the fact that I had invited them here at all, but she wasn't as distant as she had been in recent weeks. "Sophia," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "This looks lovely." "Thanks." "Mom," I said, forcing a smile, even though my heart was beating in my chest. I led them to the dining room where my dad and Emily had already taken their seats. Emily gave me a small smile but said nothing, and my dad was already deep into a conversation with David about the new technology trends. I felt the weight of their presence, but I wasn't going to let it overwhelm me. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation started off light. We talked about everything from the weather to the latest news in my industry. It felt almost normal for a few minutes, and I found myself relaxing. But I couldn't help but feel the need to address the elephant in the room, the real reason I had invited them over. Finally, I cleared my throat and spoke up, my voice steady but firm. "I wanted to talk to you all about something. It's been a long time coming, and I think it's important." My mom looked up from her plate, and I could see the cautious look in her eyes. My dad, who had been listening intently, looked at me, waiting for me to continue. Emily seemed distracted, but I knew this conversation would demand her attention soon enough. "I know things have been tense between us," I said, glancing around the table. "But I wanted you to know that I've been working hard at my job. I've worked my way up to a position I'm proud of, and I'm finally doing what I've always wanted to do. I know you've had your concerns, and I've heard them. But I'm asking you to see me for who I am now, not just the person you've always wanted me to be." There was a brief silence as my words sank in. I could feel my mom's gaze on me, but she didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked at the food on her plate, almost as though she were trying to avoid my eyes. The tension was palpable. Finally, she spoke, her tone cool as though she were carefully choosing her words. "I don't know, Sophia, I've always thought you could do more with your life. I don't see why you need to be so wrapped up in that marketing job. It's not like it's anything meaningful." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. It wasn't the reaction I had hoped for, but it wasn't entirely unexpected either. My mom had always struggled with understanding my career, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy to change that. But for the first time, I wasn't going to let it break me. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm, "I don't need your approval to be happy. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, and I'm proud of the person I've become. You don't have to understand it, but I need you to respect it. I need you to respect me." Her face hardened slightly, and for a moment, I thought she was going to lash out. But then, to my surprise, she sighed and leaned back in her chair. "I don't know if I can do that, Sophia. It's hard to let go of the image I had of you." "I understand that," I said, my voice softening, "but I need you to try. I can't keep living under this weight of expectations. I need to stand on my own 2 feet, and I need to know that you're at least trying to see me for who I am now, not who I was." There was a long pause as my mom looked at me, her expression unreadable. My dad spoke up then, breaking the silence. "I think we all need to do some thinking. Maybe we've been too caught up in the past. We're proud of you, Sophia. We should have told you that more often." I looked at him, surprised by his words. I hadn't expected them to come from him, but hearing them felt like a small victory. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. "I know we've had our differences," my dad continued, "but we're here now, and we want to be a part of your life, however that looks." For the first time, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't perfect, It wasn't everything I had hoped for, but it was a step in the right direction. I wasn't going to wait for their validation anymore. But hearing them acknowledge my efforts, however reluctantly, felt like the first real breakthrough in a long time. The rest of the evening was quieter, but not uncomfortable. We all went on to talk about other things, family stories, shared memories. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide who I was or apologize for the choices I had made. When the night ended, and my parents left, I stood by the door, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was progress. And for the first time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction, toward freedom, toward understanding, and toward the life I was meant to live. Chapter 11. The weeks that followed the dinner with my family felt like a slow, steady march forward. My career was progressing at a pace I never thought possible. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the satisfaction of truly accomplishing something on my own terms. The international campaign I had been leading was a resounding success, driving significant growth for innovative solutions. We had broken into new markets, significantly increased our brand presence, and exceeded all of our targets. The recognition from the company was rewarding, but the true victory for me wasn't the accolades or the promotions. It was the way I had managed to prove to myself that I could succeed without the approval of anyone else, especially my family. For years, I had been searching for validation from them, and now with each milestone I hit, I realized that I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need them to see me as successful to feel successful, and yet there was still something lingering in the back of my mind. My mom. The unresolved tension between us. No matter how much progress I had made, I knew that until I stood up to her, truly faced her with everything I had achieved, and the person I had become, I wouldn't fully be free. I wasn't doing this for her approval. I had already proven to myself that I didn't need it, but I needed to show her that I could thrive without her, without anyone in my family. So one evening I picked up the phone and dialed her number. My heart pounded as the ringing sounded in my ear. I had been avoiding this call for so long, but I knew I couldn't keep running from it. Hello? Her voice came through, sharp as ever. Hi, Mom. It's me, Sophia. There was a brief silence before she responded. What is it? I took a deep breath. I wanted to talk to you about everything. I've been thinking a lot lately, and I think it's time we have an honest conversation. About what? She asked, clearly guarded. I've been working really hard at innovative solutions, and the campaign I've been leading was a huge success. We've grown the company's presence internationally, and I'm really proud of what we've accomplished. I could almost hear the skepticism in her silence. That's nice, she replied, her tone neutral. I don't need you to approve of my career anymore. I continued, the words coming more easily now. I've done it. I've built something on my own, without relying on anyone's approval. But I wanted you to know that it's not just about work. It's about me finally understanding that I don't have to be who you want me to be. I'm enough as I am. Another long pause. My mom was silent, processing what I had said, and in that moment, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I wasn't expecting her to suddenly change or to shower me with praise, but I needed to speak my truth. I needed to stop letting her define who I was. I spent too many years trying to live up to your expectations, I said, my voice firm but not angry. But I can't do that anymore. I need to live for me, and I need you to respect that. Her voice, when it came, was softer, but still tinged with that old familiar edge. I've always wanted what's best for you, Sophia. I've just never been able to see it in the way you want. Maybe that's the problem, I said, my throat tightening. You've never really seen me, Mom. You've always seen the version of me that fit into your expectations. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not trying to live up to a standard that was never mine to begin with. The conversation was quiet for a while, and when she finally spoke again, it wasn't to offer apologies or explain herself. It was just a quiet admission. I don't know if I can change that, Sophia. I don't know if I can stop expecting certain things from you. I don't expect you to change, Mom, I said, my heart heavy but clear. but I'm done waiting. For you to see me the way I see myself, I've made peace with who I am. It's time for you to do the same. I don't know if I can do that, she said quietly. I've always had a vision of you. It's hard to let go of that. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I understand, but I can't keep waiting for you to change your vision. Of me, I need to move forward with my life, and that means letting go of the idea that I need your approval to be happy. Another silence, and then, to my surprise, she spoke again, her voice almost soft. I see, I can't promise I'll understand it all, but I'll try. I'll try to respect your choices, Sophia. The words didn't erase everything, but they were enough for now. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was something. It was a step forward, even if it was small. Thank you, Mom, I said, my voice breaking slightly. That's all I need right now. I hung up the phone, my heart still heavy, but also lighter in some strange way. I wasn't sure where things would go from here with my mom, but I knew I had made the right choice. I had stood up for myself for the first time in a long time. I had claimed my independence, my worth, without needing anyone's validation. The next few days were filled with a quiet kind of contentment. I focused on my work, on continuing to build the success that had already begun to take shape. I spent time with David, who was more supportive than ever, and with my friends, who had been by my side through all of this. And slowly I realized that I didn't need anyone's approval to be happy. I finally created a life that was mine, and I was proud of it. It wasn't perfect, and there were still things to work through, but I had done what I needed to do. And for the first time, I felt truly free. Chapter 12. For the first time in years, I woke up to a morning without the usual weight pressing on my chest. The air felt lighter, the sunlight warmer, and the world seemed a little quieter. I was no longer chasing approval. I wasn't waiting for my mom to accept me or my career. I had found peace, and for the first time, I was learning to truly love and accept myself. The days following my conversation with my mom had been quiet. We didn't talk much, but there was a change in the air. My mom's text had been an unexpected breakthrough, and even though I wasn't sure where it would lead, I could feel the shift within myself. I had stopped searching for validation from her, stopped desperately needing her approval. I was building a life on my own terms, and that life didn't revolve around the expectations of others. One Sunday afternoon, I found myself sitting on the couch with David, the two of us enjoying a lazy afternoon. He had become my constant, my rock, and even though we had faced our own challenges, we had learned to navigate them together. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it felt like the foundation I had been longing for. We had grown stronger through everything, my family struggles, my work battles, and the many personal revelations I had uncovered. David looked at me over his book, a soft smile on his face. You've come a long way, you know that? I nodded, smiling back. I have, haven't I? It feels like everything's finally clicking into place. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I'm really proud of you, Sophia. You've done the hard work, and it shows. For a moment, I let his words sink in. I didn't need my mom's approval to feel proud of myself anymore. David's support, his belief in me, was enough. It had taken time, but I had finally learned to stand on my own. The pieces were falling into place. My career was thriving. I was building deeper, more meaningful relationships, and I was learning to live for myself. As the weeks went by, I focused on my life with David and the future we were building together. It wasn't about waiting for family to understand or change. It was about finding peace within myself, setting boundaries, and creating the life I wanted. I started focusing on what made me happy, not what I thought would make others happy. One afternoon, as I was walking through the park near our apartment, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from her much since our last conversation, and part of me had wondered if I would ever hear from her again. But when I opened the message, I was surprised by its simplicity. I've been thinking about everything. I want to try to be a better mother. I'm sorry for everything, Sophia. The words weren't grand, They weren't filled with sweeping declarations or promises of change, but they were enough. She was acknowledging her mistakes, and for the first time, I could see a crack in the walls she had built. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, but it was a start. I sat on a bench in the park, staring at the text, trying to process what it meant. I had spent so much time wanting her to see me, to understand my pain, to acknowledge everything I had gone through. But now I realized that the power had always been mine to take. I didn't need her to fix everything. I had already done the hard work of healing myself. Her apology was important, yes, but I wasn't waiting for it anymore. I was freed out the next day. I called her. Hello. Her voice was tentative, unsure, but there was something softer in it than I had heard in a long time. Hi, Mom, I said, my voice steady but gentle. I got your message. There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. I meant every word, she said quietly. I've been thinking a lot, and I realize I've been hard on you, Sophia. I'm sorry. I don't want to keep hurting you. My heart tightened, but this time it wasn't with anger. It was with something else, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel for so long. Compassion. It wasn't the answer I'd expected, but it was the one I needed. Thank you, Mom, I said, the words coming out easier than I thought they would. That means a lot to me. But I need you to know I'm not the person I was before. I've worked hard to get to where I am, and I've had to learn to stand on my own. I see that, she said quietly. I'm proud of you, Sophia. I'm proud of everything you've done. I wish I could have been there for you in a better way. I've always wanted the best for you, but I didn't always know how to show it. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I know, Mom, and I'm not angry anymore. I just need things to be different now. I need to be able to live my life without feeling like I'm living under your expectations. I understand, she said softly. I really do. I'm going to try, Sophia. I want to respect you, your choices, your life. I don't want to hold you back anymore. We ended the conversation with a quiet understanding. It wasn't the perfect resolution, but it was a step in the right direction. The hurt wasn't gone, and it probably never would be. But I didn't need her to fix everything. I'd already learned how to fix myself. As I sat there, the weight of all those years of waiting for validation lifted from my shoulders. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. I had learned that my worth was not dependent on anyone else's approval. I was enough as I was, and I could finally see that in the weeks that followed. My relationship with my mom didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became something else, something more honest. We spoke more openly, with less expectation and more understanding. There were still difficult moments, but we were learning to navigate them. And in the quiet moments of my life, I found peace. I had the love and support of David, and that was enough. I had built a life that was mine, one that didn't depend on anyone's validation but my own. And for the first time, I could see the future clearly, one where I was free to live authentically, with no one holding me back. The change had been slow, but it was profound. And as I looked forward, I knew that no matter what came next, I was ready. Because I had already learned the most important lesson of all, how to love myself.